now that everyone around you is dead and buried, there's nothing holding you back from getting all of those warp zones and bandages into the Rapture. I was first thinking of getting the warp zones into the order that you find them into the episode, but you all know that we want to see this warp zone first.
Warp zone!
It might not be hard getting to this warp zone, but that's pretty much the only thing about it which is easy. Yep, it's the YouTube LPer's favorite game. I wanna be the guy, even though there's barely any game content into this game whatsoever. Unless that you're really thinking, replaying the same thing over and over again only to learn all about the bullshit obstacles that you cannot possibly dodge is incredibly fun to do. But enough about that. Let's focus onto the main warp zone itself. Pretty much every single person who have played Super Meat Boy agree on one thing. This is the hardest warp zone into the entire game. Even on the Something Awful forums thread that was about Super Meat Boy, pretty much all people were like, oh, it took me something like 2 hours in order to make it through this warp zone. It took me like 3 or 4 hours. I broke a gamepad while playing this zone, and yeah, all of those horror stories like that. I've never really had the same amount of trouble, but this still remains an incredibly difficult part of the game. Mainly because every single jump in this is difficult. Basically, the kid is the second coming of Ungmo. He does exactly the same thing as Ungmo, which means dying, however, without the cool somersaults that he does whenever he dies. But yeah, he can also do a double jump, and I find in general that he handles a whole lot better than Ungmo. But before you can finally use him, you gotta earn your stripes. This is the hardest screen that you'll see into the entire game. I don't really remember how long it took me to beat the kid whenever I first got the game, but I figure it took me something around either 30 or 45 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that I spent most of this time into this level. And this is mainly due to the elevator shaft that you see into the level. I'm talking mainly about the second and the third one. The ones which are rising and falling through this very narrow corridor. Yeah, the one which I'm currently scaling. These sections in the level are pretty terrible, if only because, well, not only the timing that you have to use in order to get through these parts has to be perfect, but it doesn't have anything to do with the abilities that the kid get. I mean, no double jumping will do you any good here, except maybe dying faster. I mean, I don't know. If you are some sort of futuristic robot that pretty much will do calculations and jumping perfectly, you will be able to jump up this shaft, but I really don't see anyone pulling that off. And I know for sure that you couldn't do this for the part where you have to go down. Yeah, this part is ridiculously difficult to wade through. I mean, these sections require a whole lot of precision, but the level itself also happens to be pretty long. At least it is for the standards of this game. I mean, a regular run through this level usually will take something like about a quarter of a minute. And once again, I would like to emphasize how much this game makes you develop ADD, because 3/4 of a minute for this game is a long time. I actually took the time to count the time here, and we're already at half a minute, and we still have the hardest part of the game to go through. Oh boy! And we made it. Thankfully, the rest of this level is easy, but you'll so hate yourself if you die into this section. I mean, it's really easy, but at this point, you pretty much have stopped thinking. And this is how horrible mistakes are born. So here we go, final level, and this is probably the easiest one of the bunch, and my favorite one also because it explicitly makes you use the kid's double jump in order to make it through. And it also happens to be pretty hard because you have to time all of your jumps perfectly, but with some practice, it's really the easiest one of the bunch. So here we go, we've cleared the hardest warp zone of the entire game. And he's always so happy to get killed all of the time. After going through all of this trouble, the kid really deserves his own showcase for a minute. As I already said, he is Ungmo 2.0, as in, he does exactly the same thing as Ungmo, only though he does it better, if only because his jumps feel a whole lot more fluid and easy to control, so therefore, stunts like this one will be a whole lot easier to pull off. An easy way to shave off 2 seconds of leaderboard times if you're not skilled enough to use Naija. Once again, that's another level in which you can use him if you want to. Once again, Naija can do all of this, but until that you get good at maneuvering with Naija through all of these tiny corridors which are incredibly difficult to use air dash, well, this is gonna be a much easier alternative. So basically, you'll want to use the kid a lot onto levels which are vertically based, or other levels which are horizontal, like the one that I pointed out earlier, but which has the occasional jump where you have to go up and down. So here we go! We're 5 minutes in and we only have one warp zone done. Thank you, kid. So, while in hell the gimmick was having warp zones which were a whole lot hidden, well... The gimmick into the warp zones of Rapture is that you have to hurry the hell up in order to get to them because they will close rather fast, and usually the road toward them will be pretty tricky. And just in case that you couldn't get enough of the warp zone of the kid, here comes another warp zone that make you want to hate yourself. This warp zone is called Skyscraper, and as far as regular warp zones go, this is by far the hardest one in the entire game. This is a warp zone that manages to be incredibly difficult and annoying, all while sticking only to very basic obstacles. I mean, the entire obstacles that you have to go through here is spikes and saw blades. There's absolutely nothing else. There's no rocket launchers, there's no fading blocks, there's no gravity wells, nothing like that, no. It's incredibly basic, but at the same time, it remains incredibly challenging because all of the levels are incredibly lengthy. You still have the 3 lives limit that you have to deal with because if you fail to finish a level within 3 lives, you have to restart from the first level, which makes things even more annoying. And finally, this warp zone offers the single worst level of the entire game as far as warp zones are concerned. And good news, because this level is right here. Now, you may look at this level and you might be thinking, oh come on, what is infuriating about this level? Okay, it looks hard, but how come it is the plague of humanity and mankind as we know it? Well, you will see whenever we'll finally get to the bandage. You can be sure that the designers have decided to keep their dick move for the very end. But this part is also quite a dick move because this jump is a whole lot harder than you'd think. You have to let go the run button and then press it whenever you'll have leapt off the hedge, otherwise you will hit the spike. So yeah, that's a dick move. The bandage makes you replay the entire level from scratch. Now, this is a horrible bandage. You have to replay the entire level and there was absolutely nothing different. It's basically just stretching the game longer than it possibly needs to be. This is not even heading a challenge, this is simply being a dick butt to the people who play your game. It's almost as if they were aware of this, because the bandage into the other level is pathetically easy to get, but the ending of the level is a whole lot trickier, but thankfully we're done with this level. Yep, you have to use the kid here. Or well, any character that can get to this place faster, but yeah, as regular Meat Boy, you will never get there in time before the portal closes. And hey, that splash screen was drawn by the guy who made Jumper, by the way, Matt Thorson. This warp zone feels like such a huge oddity, especially considering, well, the rest of the game and the fact that this is happening during the end of the world. Instead of having dilapidated buildings and maggots and things that wants to kill you, well, good news, you're in a tropical island instead. And yeah, by the way, you don't even have to play most of the level because you can simply shortcut it this way. I mean, that music really is unfitting with what's happening on the screen right now. And in fact, I don't know, I find this warp zone to be a lot easier than most of the other warp zones that you had to play through into the Rapture. Not that I complain, however, because you always need a break every once in a while. And yeah, by the way, don't feel in such a hurry, you don't need the lock gates in order to make it to the end. A wall jump will do. And once again, it is the case here. In fact, I'm not even sure how this level is supposed to work because there's the breakable blocks down here, but you don't even need them in order to get up. I mean, I don't know, maybe you need them if you're not as good with wall jumping, but I don't know, at this point of the game, this is skills that you should have acquired. How fitting! The final warp zone of the Rapture also happens to be on its very last level. And the entrance is pretty much a two-way race, because we have to get there before the warp zone closes, but we also need to get there before the switch will close and make it so that the way to the warp zone will be locked. Alright, final warp zone, here we come! Now, the splash screen for the final warp zone will be spectacular! Ho ho ho, guess again. Am I missing something here? Because, I don't know, the graphical style really doesn't look that up to snuff, but I don't know, looking at the guy who made it, it doesn't look as if most of his games really are that advanced on a graphical standpoint, so maybe this is why it's fitting. So yeah, good news to everyone who missed Fan, because they're back with a vengeance here. the first and the third levels of the warp zone will pretty much highlight how fans can be used to the maximum asshole effect possible. I mean, you have to fit underneath these fans, and the opening is so limited because if you fall too fast, well, you'll simply hit the fan and you will die. But thankfully this level is a whole lot more tame, but I don't know, it also feels a whole lot more boring if we compare it to the other levels of this episode. Or warp zone, or whatever you want it to call. And thankfully for a change, the bandages in it are pretty easy to find. However, yeah, the first one was kind of perilous to get, but this one is pretty easy. But yeah, essentially you have to overcome the same obstacle something like 3 times in a row, and as long as you don't run and pretty much walk through the entire thing, the jumps that you have to do are not too difficult. It's only a matter of patience, but unfortunately for this warp zone, they kept the hardest level of the entire thing last, because this obstacle is ridiculously difficult. And in fact, we're gonna see a level like this into Cotton Alley, so yeah, take notes because we're gonna have to do stuff like this again into 2 chapters. And here we go, that was the final warp zone of the entire game. Well, that was the final regular warp zone of the game, but we still have the glitch world. And this, we're not entirely done with this because we still have another one of these which is coming up into the upcoming chapter. There are 6 glitch worlds into the entire game, and whenever you finish any single one of them, it will increase your total progress onto your save game by 1%. Which means that a fully finished save game into this game will make it so that, well, your total progress will be 106% instead of 100%, but it doesn't make it so that the world themselves will have like a completion progress of 101%. Nope, this is only global progress we're talking about here. So, are you good with dodging rockets into incredibly tight hallway, and do you like being constantly on the run with pretty much no safe spot anywhere? Well, this warp zone is for you because there is pretty much no section in this level where you're afforded to take all of your time because you're constantly on the move because of the rocket launchers. This part here is the only part of the entire level where you can take your time, but other than that, you have to be constantly moving. And we're done! Nah, shut up! I'm trying to talk! Now, this good old merry melody finally was suited to what was happening in the game itself, and of course, I took the liberty of cutting that out, but I figured that, well, you should have seen that this was my aborted attempt at Toad doing this warp zone. So here we go, the final 20 bandages of the game will await us here, into the Rapture. These bandages are the only possible way that we can rebuild this society which has been destroyed by progress and civilization. And of course one giant jerk with a robot suit and who still happens to be a stillborn baby. Now this bandage here is not particularly hard to get, but it's really annoying because it will make you take forever to finish the level. And that goes double if you manage to miss the bandage while doing this jump. You can use a higher jumping character in order to get this bandage. I don't know, I think that Fly Wrench will be able to make this jump all the way up, but I find it easier to simply pick Meat Boy, if only because then the other section where you have to outrun the bridge will be a whole lot easier. Now, say hello to a bandage from hell. Yeah, it's hidden into the skyscraper. So, a real bandage from hell, or a bandage from a warp zone of hell, because I still can't believe how dickish the warp zones into the hell section have been into this game. But enough about that. After all, hell is nuked and will never possibly come back from its remains. So, I'd like to do an addendum concerning the kid. I know that a whole lot of people will be disappointed because, well, there won't be any unedited footage of me getting to the kid, but it really wouldn't be worth showing, if only because it only took me 6 minutes making it through the warp zone, and I've only died like 17 times doing so. This has been like the best run of the kid that I've ever done. Whenever you're facing extreme adversity, your playing abilities shape up. So yeah, I was saying into a previous video that, well, Jill would pretty much cheese this entire level and make it abnormally easy, and well, you can see a showcase of it right here. As long as you have a working thumb that can mash the X button, you will have an easy time going through this level. This bandage is slightly trickier because, yeah, you have to contend with a whole lot of zombies here, but just group them into one group like that and it becomes pretty simple. But don't go for the bandage unless that all of the meats are grouped into one single blob of death and destruction, because things will be pretty nasty. This bandage is not really difficult to get, but it becomes pretty hard on the single ground that, well, you pretty much come to a complete stop, and whenever you're not having any kind of momentum while dealing with those gravity wells, it becomes pretty hard to deal with them. So here we go. I thought that I was done for a second, but alright. Third try is always a good one, right? Yeah, with enough upward momentum, you probably could go over the saw blade entirely and making this section a whole lot simpler, but this thing unfortunately didn't happen. Now, this is a pretty annoying bandage, mainly because there's absolutely no room for any mistakes here. You have to grab this bandage really fast, get all the way back inside, and don't hit the switch again by accident if you know what's good for you. Okay, everything is reset, so the coast is finally clear. Or not, because don't forget that this level still happens to be incredibly difficult. Yeah, I didn't really showcase how hard this section of the level was, but at least you've had a good example of how nasty it could be. Yeah, it really comes pretty close here. And of course, you still have to deal with the annoying mini-saws, which remain a jumping nightmare. And overall, it can be a pretty messy bandage, as you'll have the possibility of seeing right here. If anything, some of those extra videos have been pretty good in order to showcase how some levels could give me a whole lot more difficulties, because, well, at some part I will be saying, oh, this obstacle is really hard, even though I wouldn't die on it, but yeah, sometime I will record the game and then I will breeze through every single obstacle, but then again, you will replay this level again and everything that went right the first time will go horribly wrong and there will be a whole lot more of this. It's all about maximizing the opportunities for failure. Now, you don't need Nigel in order to get this bandage, but since I hate playing this level, I just figured I'm just gonna use her in order to cheese the entire level by simply flying up the shaft where the keys fall in, so that I don't have to deal with the whole level gimmick. Plus, you cannot say no to Nigel replays, if only because they always look so goofy, because whenever you're gliding all around the place, the proper animation never plays, so it all seems like that you're always continuously jumping into place. So yeah, you have to hit both switches in order to get to the bandage, because one of the switches will open the way forward here, and once again, you have to group all of the meats into one blob. The same thing that you did into level 520. Ah, Jesus Christ, I wish to find my way out of here, because those rodents are so freaking annoying. Sounds like rats running across a keyboard. Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the hardest bandage to get into the entire game. There's been no other challenge in the game which has offered me more grief than getting this bandage. And yeah, you probably can see this bandage, but you see those two small destructible blocks onto the floor? The one which narrowly was missed by the rocket? This is where the bandage is. And yes, you have to pretty much do air control onto the rocket like that in order to make it do crazy loopings into the air. In order to send it crashing all the way down, you have to avoid the rotating turrets which fire incredibly fast and which makes it so that you cannot freely jump anywhere. Very pleasant stuff. But here we go, we finally got the bandage, but uh-oh, we still have to deal with the rest of the level. Because not only getting the bandage is hard, but the chances of dying are really high, as you can see late into the level. Just as you've witnessed here. Oh my god, now I have to do this all over again. And this is a pretty good representation of what it'll be like to retry it after you've brutally failed. You will try as hard as you can, but you'll never manage to get the rocket into the blocks anymore. Either that or the rotating turret will take care of you and pretty much kill you. Or hey, the rocket launcher will simply kill you. This bandage pretty much wins the award of being the potential hour of pain, because it will possibly take you a long time in order to get it. Alright, I've gotten the bandage again, now don't fuck up. Please don't fuck up this time around. Just keep in mind, this is not a race, you're not here in order to get to the end as fast as you can, the only aim is to survive! I mean, the hard times where the rocket launchers can be slightly unpredictable, so it'll be even harder, but here we go, we finally got it. After 24 deaths! I don't think we're gonna see any more replays of this ilk where I'll die a million of times, because as far as I know, this is the most that I'll ever die into this game. Or maybe I've spoken too soon, because this is another level that will kill me a whole lot while I try to get the bandage. The bandage itself is pretty easy to get, even though it's pretty sneaky, because as you've seen and like I've told into the previous video, The bandage will rise from the bottom left corner of the level alongside with the saws, and the left and the right portion of the level are completely safe of the saw blades. So if you wanted to, you could simply hide there and wait for the entire saw blades to be so high that there will not be any kind of hindrance, but since I'm used to pretty much fight the bullets directly, instead of trying to climb my way up and avoid the bullets which are raining down on you, I prefer to do it this way because it's simpler for me, but whatever floats your boat. And yeah, when I said that I was gonna die almost as much, yeah, that's 21 deaths that you see here, but they were all worth it because we all have 100 bandages in the game now. Hooray! At 90 bandages, you unlock Captain Viridian from V or the letter V 6 times, as it supposedly has said. He's the slowest character of the entire game, he probably has the crappiest jump, but no matter, because he doesn't need any of this in order to be a good character, because just like in the game that he comes from, he can flip gravity, and this can cheese a whole lot of levels into the game in a pretty hilarious fashion. Instead of being any close to the par time or anything, you can make it so that a whole lot of levels will be ridiculously low from the usual times. Sometimes you won't gain any time, but it's always good for a laugh. And yeah, remember when I played the light wheel version of this level as the kid and got a rather good time? Captain Viridian just laughs at this record time from earlier. Even though it comes at a rather big expense as you've seen here, but this is what happened when you try out stunts for the first time and decide to put all of it to tape. And at 100 bandage, you unlock everyone's favorite block builder or destroyer or anything, Steve from Minecraft. Whenever he's not making the game crash, well, he can destroy blocks, and this makes it so that you can cheese pretty much every level in the game. As you'll see here, you can cheese a whole lot of levels into various ways, but in the end, all of this cheesing is done for fun because you cannot establish leaderboard times as Mr. Minecraft, and you cannot earn Iron Man achievements neither. Yeah, you can also build blocks, but this is pretty dodgy. So here we go, we're done with the Rapture, the end of the world has been vanquished. Stay tuned as we attempt the final chapter of the game, where things are stripped at its most basic, but where Meat Boy will be stripped from all of his body parts, and a epic confrontation against Dr. Fetus. Chapter 6. The End.